Hi, welcome to your Rapid Revive training with the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. My name is Tiana Vasquez, and I'm your Administrative Support Specialist for Revive. Today, we're going to start off with a chart in regards to showing the total number of fatal opioid overdoses within the last few decades. Here you can see, starting from 2007 all the way up to 2015, although unfortunate, the total number of fatalities were still consistent. However, from 2015 to 2017, there was an unfortunate increase of fatal opioid overdoses. Now, we believe that that is due to the increase of introduction of fentanyl. Unfortunately, due to fentanyl, the increase of overdoses have been very dramatic. From 2019 to 2022, there has been a significant increase of overdoses as well, and that can be in part due to the COVID-19. Due to COVID-19, unfortunately, people were isolated. People may have lost family members. People may have lost jobs. Maybe they didn't lose their job, but unfortunately, maybe they lost other things that we all have been a part of. Unfortunately, this caused an increase due to people maybe finding coping mechanisms, right? So we have opioids playing a big part of that as well. Next, we have here the legal protections and overdose responses. Okay. The first law is the immunity from civil liability law, pertains to any lay rescuers responding to an overdose. This grants a person who in good faith administers naloxone for overdose reversal in an emergency to an individual who is believed to be experiencing or about to experience a life-threatening opioid overdose shall not be liable for any civil damage for ordinary negligence and acts or omission resulting from the rendering of such treatment. So basically, if let's say I am at my local fast food restaurant, I go into the restroom and I see someone that I believe is experiencing an opioid overdose based on what's happening around them. I administer my naloxone. Hopefully, they do come to with EMS arriving. However, if they do decide to say, hey, I did not give you permission to give me any type of treatment, I'm going to sue you. We are covered by the immunity from civil liability law that is in place. Next is the safe reporting of overdoses law. This is protection for both the person overdosing and the person seeking help. This law was put into place in hopes to reduce the number of fatalities when it comes to opioid overdoses. Usually overdoses occur because, well, fatality of overdoses occur specifically because people are afraid to call for help. So this law was put into place to help with that. This states that no individual shall be subject to arrest or prosecution for simple possession of a controlled substance, marijuana, or controlled paraphernalia, intoxication in public, or the unlawful purchase, possession, or consumption of alcohol if the evidence for the charge was found as a result of obtaining emergency medical attention. So, to qualify, you must first seek emergency medical attention for yourself or for someone else, remain at the scene or with the person until law enforcement arrives, and identify yourself to the responding law enforcement officer. An example of this, let's say if I'm holding a gathering and someone is experiencing an overdose. When I call for help, I will notify them that my friend or whoever it is experiencing an overdose. Once law enforcement arrives, I will let them know and identify myself that I was the one calling for help. Now, many people ask, well, does this law also cover other people at the household? In this case, since I'm having a gathering, not only will this law cover myself, but it will also cover everyone in the house with me. Please note that in this law, it pertains to simple possession. In regards to what is simple possession, we encourage everyone to go ahead and do their research if anyone has specific questions as to what simple possession is of each substance. Note that the law does not apply if the emergency medical attention sought or obtained was during the execution of a search warrant or during execution of a lawful arrest. So what are opioids? Opioids are a class of drugs that include street drugs, synthetically manufactured, and pain relievers available legally by prescription. Our typical opioids that we might know from day to day are hydrocodone, oxycodone, morphine, codeine, or let's say methadone. These are all just an example of what opioids are. Now, what is an opioid overdose? So, our body naturally produces opioids, but in a small amount. An opioid overdose occurs when there are too many opioids in our system affecting our breathing. What does that look like? We have opioid receptors on our brain, and our opioids block all of our receptors on our brain, eventually affecting our breathing, slowing down our breathing, then stopping our breathing, leading to a fatality. Risk factors for opioid overdose. Certain people based on experiences are high risk for opioid overdose emergency, including prior overdose. If someone has overdosed before, more than likely to overdose again. So, reduced tolerance is a major risk factor as well. Previous users who have stopped using due to abstinence, incarceration, or maybe they were in treatment, maybe they've had an illness, if they go back to using the same amount that they used prior, they are more than likely to experience an overdose due to the reduced tolerance levels. Mixing of drugs. People believe that if you mix depressants with stimulants, that it will cancel each other out. And unfortunately, that is not the case. We are just topping one drug with another. Using alone, major risk factor. If someone's using alone, they are less likely to call for help for themselves. Variations in strength or quantity of drugs. Formulation is a huge risk factor as well. Let's say if someone gets a prescription and not realize that maybe it's a higher dosage, or maybe it changed from quick acting to long lasting, that can be a risk factor for an overdose. Also, if someone is using street drugs, they may hear that someone may have a better street drug. They go to use that, and surprisingly, maybe it contains fentanyl in it as well. Medical conditions such as chronic lung disease, kidney, or liver problems are all risk factors of an opioid overdose. Now, what is naloxone? Naloxone temporarily blocks the effects of opioids and can reverse an overdose. That is a big thing that we all need to remember, that naloxone can reverse opioid overdose, not prevent opioid overdose. Naloxone only works if opioids are in the body, and it has no effect on alcohol or other drugs, such as cocaine, benzos, and amphetamines. It can take 1 to 3 minutes to start working and may require more than one dose. Effects can last 30 to 90 minutes, and it varies per person. So let's say if I administer naloxone to someone, they can be okay for up to 30 to 90 minutes, some maybe just 30, some the full 90 until emergency services arrive. Naloxone may cause an opioid dependent person to go into withdrawal. This is opioid acute withdrawal symptoms. An example, they may experience nausea, vomiting, agitation, muscle spasms, and whatnot. The symptoms will go away once the naloxone wears off. Naloxone comes in a nasal spray and an injection. So, how does naloxone work? We're going back to the example given of what opioids do, right? So, our brains have opioid receptors on our brain, and when it's clogged up with opioids, that can cause opioid overdose. Now, what naloxone does, naloxone comes into the picture, kicks off the opioids from the opioid receptors, allowing the person to breathe once again on their own. That is how naloxone works. What does an overdose look like? A person is unresponsive, they won't wake up even if you yell or shake them. We can try waking them by doing a sternum rub, placing our hand in a fist, and raking up and down against our sternum. We will do that to see if we get a reaction. Usually, with just enough pressure, we would. We can also see if they're responsive by seeing if they're breathing. Again, our opioid receptors are blocked by opioids, which will affect our breathing. So we could place our ear to their mouth and check and see if their chest is rising or falling, and feel for breath at the same time. Usually we can also look for things like discoloration, such as in their lips turning blue, or fingernails turning blue, or maybe their body turning pale or gray or ashen. What to do in case of an overdose. So first, we would check for responsiveness, all the steps that we just went through now. We will then call 911 and let them know immediately our location and what's going on. We will then give 2 rescue breaths for a few quick breaths if the person is not breathing. Once we administer the 2 rescue breaths, we will then administer the naloxone. The naloxone comes in a packaging just like this. We'll peel, place in between our fingers, right here with our thumb on the plunger. We will place into the nostril all the way up to where the nostril and fingertips meet and do 1 firm push, and you will hear a click and hear the naloxone dispense. Once we administer the naloxone, we will want to wait 2 to 3 minutes to see if the individual responds. While we're waiting the 2 to 3 minutes, it's imperative to also give the person rescue breaths or CPR, because remember, the individual is not breathing, and we want to make sure that oxygen gets to their brain to avoid later brain damage. So while we're giving the rescue breathing or CPR, we will wait the 2 to 3 minutes, and if the person does not come to within that time, then we will administer the second dose of naloxone. If you do not have naloxone, it's important to call for help and give rescue breaths. Rescue breathing will help keep them alive until they get the naloxone. That is the least that we can do. Next is the recovery position. The recovery position setup is in place. Let's say if I left my naloxone in my vehicle, or maybe I left my phone somewhere, or possibly I already called for 911 and now I just need to move things out the way so emergency medical services could come in without a problem. This setup is important to keep the individual safe. Let's say if they do end up vomiting, keeps them from choking. And we also want to keep them from suffocating or from rolling onto their stomach as well, just to keep the person safe for that small period of time that we will not be able to be with them. Now, where does one get naloxone? Anyone can grab naloxone at their local health department at no cost, at their local CSB, Community Service Board, at no cost, and also at your local pharmacies. If you do go to get your naloxone at your local pharmacy, please know that you would have to use your insurance or pay out of pocket. Good news is that no prescription is needed. When you receive your naloxone, in the box comes always 2 nasal sprays. We have 2 nasal sprays in the case of, let's say, after the administration of 1, if the individual does not respond, we can then administer the second dose of naloxone. Now, if someone does come to after the first dose and after the 30 to 90 minutes, they go back into overdose, we can still administer the second dose. This is why each box always has 2 doses. Now, please be mindful that an individual can receive up to more than 2 doses of naloxone. Let's say if I'm with myself and a friend of mine and they also have their naloxone readily available, we can administer a 3rd or 5th dose if necessary. What's important is to wait the allotted 2 to 3 minutes in between doses, allowing the individual to react to the naloxone, and hopefully they can start breathing on their own again. Thank you for attending this Rapid Revive training. After today, you are more than set to go ahead and save lives. For more information, please go to our Revive website on DBHDS. And also for more information on naloxone, you may visit the VDH website as well.